Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome to this week's edition of the Hare Krishna Project podcast. This is episode number 156. A huge thank you to our ever-growing global audience. People from all over the world now tune in to listen to our guests, not listen to me, but to listen to our guests each week, and I really, really appreciate that. Do not forget, if you're watching this on YouTube, if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button so you can be kept updated about future podcasts and video productions from the Hare Krishna Project. And or if you're watching this on Facebook, which is the other way you can watch this podcast, if you haven't already, please do like or follow the Hare Krishna Project Facebook page so you can be kept updated about all the things we're doing here at the Hare Krishna Project. As you know, we don't just produce this podcast, we also do book distribution, Hare Krishna festivals, school visits, and lots of other exciting things. Okay, episode 156. We're still climbing up that ladder, aren't we? I genuinely love producing this podcast each week because I get to meet some fascinating people from all over the world. And I'm really looking forward to today's conversation. I'm really pleased to welcome our guest this week. It's Dani Max. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, everyone.
It's great to have you with us. Thank you for agreeing to come on the show at long last.
My pleasure. It's my pleasure joining you here.
We've we were just talking before I hit the record button that we've known of each other's existence for some time. I always think that sounds a bit creepy, doesn't it? You've known of someone's existence. Um, but the thing about social media is that you see people online and they're in the same groups or they have the same interests, and you feel like you know them, and actually. I think of the 156 guests in the flesh, I've met probably less than 10, less than five even. I don't know over the years. So this podcast is a great way to connect with people. Okay, Dani Max, we're going to start with a nice easy question. It's the first question that every guest gets just to warm them up and to warm me up as well sometimes as well. So please tell us a little bit about you and where you are from.
Okay. Uh, well, uh, yeah, I'm Dani Max. I use masculine neutral pronouns. I'm 26 years old. I'm from Colombia. I studied visual arts actually in National University. I like painting and then doing manual stuff, like things with my hands. I love learning. I love teaching about arts, about philosophy, about plants, about uh, like one of my hobbies is like herbal medicine. So I'm really like that plant guy. And I like to think about and learn about like strategies for the well-being of people. I really care about learning how to connect strategies for well-being to Krishna consciousness. I've I've been trying to do that for a while now, in my personal um, practice. I'm from a city called Barranquilla, but I'm living in a different city, and it's a city in Colombia, which is a country with a lot of possibilities for preaching. Um, I'm really interested in, as I said, in arts, but also in like diversity, in inclusiveness. I'm a trans non-binary devotee, and I'm also autistic. Um, so I'm really interested in like the intersections of what people need from Krishna consciousness. That's my main interest at the moment, and it has been for the past few years.
I really like what you just said then, and I've not. I think I've never heard anyone say it quite like that before, but I really loved it that you like finding out what people need from Krishna consciousness. I've never heard that expression before, but I actually quite like it.
I don't know if I've heard it before. I don't know if I came up with it, but that's what I like. Like, I mean, not everyone has the same experience with Krishna consciousness. Not everyone um, needs the same things from Krishna. Everyone has a special relationship, and therefore, what they will need from the practice of sadhana bhakti will also be different. Like some people will need, I don't know, to be going to parikramas or going to festivals, going to these kind of big things. Other devotees are more simple and they just need to sweep the temple floor. And yeah, some people need more association, some people need more reading. We all need reading and we all need association, but like in different levels of attention.
Yeah, yeah. You know what, after today's podcast, I'm gonna think that through. What do we need from Krishna consciousness? It's an interesting approach to it. But yeah, thank you for sharing that, and thank you for sharing a bit of information about yourself, as well. 26, you're so young, I have to say. Um, I don't want to be 26 again, but yeah, you're very mature. I have to say, you're very mature for being 26. Okay, so you've talked a bit about your interests and your hobbies. Um, Tell us a bit about how you met the devotees, or how did you discover Krishna consciousness?
Well, I actually discovered the first book about Krishna consciousness when I was around 10 or 11 at my parents' home. They are both teachers, so they had a bookshelf with books about many topics about science, math, storybooks, cookbooks, and there were I found The Perfection of Yoga and The Laws of Nature by Prabhupada. Like the what I remember is like that picture of a man with an ox, a cow head, and a cow with a man's head. And I was like, as I said, like 10 or 11. So it was like shocking picture to me. And I also found a few books of prayers and random booklets about yoga by Prabhupada also. Um, I then found out that they never read them. They just, someone had brought them to them and they just saved it in the bookshelf. And I found them and I did read them. So from there, the spark of curiosity was lit. And I started searching on my own, like by myself. I tried to read the Bible at that age. When I was like in fifth grade, I read the Bible, but I felt that that approach to God and to understanding life, it was missing something. Um, so uh, I remember at that moment, I was like 12. I declared that I was an atheist because that didn't make sense. None of that religion stuff made sense to me. So I just said I was an atheist because I got disappointed by what I was finding in the Bible, and I was like what I was finding in the people that said that were following that. And after I finished high school, um, now during high school I just kept on with my philosophy research on my own. And when I finished high school, I moved to a different city to study, to go to college. And I got in touch with the devotees of the STS MAD online and also found out about a restaurant that was close by where I was attending like a trans and human rights class. and it was a temple from a different mission, and I got some books also there. I went to a few programs like Julan Jatra. I attended Kartik. That's the first time I got to to offer Gilam to Damodar. Few Arctics, but I didn't feel completely that I fit in with that mission. Um, and then after a few months or a few years passed by, I was like on the bus listening to a class by those devotees that was recorded. And it's a funny story because I thought, I mean, I had my earphones on, but and I was listening to the class in by the earphones, but the phone was also um how do you say it, like I could hear it on my earphones, and the people around me could also hear the sound of the class. So I just was listening, and a guy approached me like curious, asking like, what are you listening to? And he was a devotee from the local ISKCON temple. I didn't know much about ISKCON at the moment. Um, the only thing I knew was those two books that I had from Prabhupada, and he invited me to go to Haranam, but I was like in a rush, so he invited me to go to a weekly kirtan program, and I started attending those weekly programs, and over time I started attending Sunday program, and then I moved to a place that allowed me to go to Srimad Bhagavatam class every morning. And then eventually things happened. I moved into the temple. I moved out to finish college, and then I moved in back. And I was like sick for some time, and the devotees just told me to. They were kind to tell to allow me to live in the temple while I was sick. Um, and yeah, when I was sick at first, I wasn't doing much service, and then I moved out again, and then it was coming back and
Mm,
forth kind
mm,
of. And I moved out again like 2 months, 3 months ago. I needed like a change of perspective.
mm.
That's basically.
I'm quite intrigued that you said that your parents were teachers. You found this book on their bookshelf and they were teachers. So what kind of teachers were they or are they?
My dad is a physics professor in the university, and my mom is a very special person. She studied like biology, and then she studied chemistry, and then she studied environmental sciences, and then she made a master on education, and then
Wow.
she made another master on now I don't remember what was the name, neuropedagogy. I don't know how to
Wow.
translate that into English, but it's like uh, she specialized in uh, uh, branch of um, pedagogy. I don't know how to
Wow.
say
It
that.
sounds fascinating. Something I don't know about, but it does sound fascinating.
And they also studied. They are both Catholic theologians, so they have both the theological perspective and the scientific
Wow.
academic perspective.
So just out of
They're
interest, what have been their views or their approach to you joining the Hare Krishna movement?
um, well, they're at first they were like against me being in the Hare Krishna movement, but then they realized like how my life had changed, because before I actually met the devotees. Um, I suffered from severe depression and anxiety. So when I started like actually applying the practice of Krishna consciousness, they saw that they have been seeing the change over the years, and it's like, okay, they're now more um, opened with the idea.
Mm, mm. That's really good. Yeah, it's encouraging to hear. Okay, so let's talk a bit now about um, things a bit more in detail. So you've long been a supporter of the trans and allies group of devotees. Why is that, and why is such a support group important in the Hare Krishna community?
Okay. Um, yeah, I think I've been in the group since the beginning of the group, since Radha started the group and with Suki and other devotees. It's a group I especially um, feel the need for. Like we know we're not these bodies, and I understand that we should all get that basic principle. But I feel that there were some things about my experience with spirituality and my experience with the Krishna consciousness that I would not be able to share with people other than in this group. Yesterday, for example, we met. Um, there were some very how do you say it, like very specific things that if you have not experienced a life identifying as transgender, you might understand it from an empathy or sympathy point of view, but you might not be able to really connect from there. So that was the part that I was missing from association, like a connection of my experience with others. Um, I remember that on the first meetings, this group has been alive for a few years now, and the first things we did, like on the first meeting, was like write a mission statement for this group, and this group was created to show or to show that Sri Krishna Chaitanya's movement is for everyone, for by spreading awareness of the diverse Krishna consciousness movement with emphasis on the third gender community. In the Gaudiya Vaishnavism, we were trying to provide a safe space for transgender, non-binary devotees, intersex devotees to gain association. That's one of our priorities. And we aim to expand on the importance of um, the importance and understanding of service to and from the transgender devotees. Uh, I think it's important for a group like this to exist because, as I said, it provides a safe space for association to trans devotees that, for example, have been um, um, banned from their communities or local communities, from trans devotees are thinking to leave the movement um, due to like thinking that it might be a contradiction. Uh, it's a safe space also to support each other in our practice of the principles of Bhakti Yoga. Um, and why is a group like this important to the Hare Krishna communities? Well, mm, we were recently also discussing this topic, And the point of this group is to accept devotees' personhood in their spiritual practice of devotional service. Why exclude someone from service, from community, from programs because of an external label, from because of their trans experience? If her priority is to reach out to other trans devotees that are out there and have no safe sangha, that might be they have been rejected on their local temples, to the queer devotees that have been told um, that because of that material circumstance, they're not qualified to practice sadhana bhakti. Being trans is not sinful. It's just another bodily designation. Bodily designations cannot disqualify anyone from approaching the inquiry of the absolute truth, Sri Krishna. And um, we've seen that over the years that this group has existed, there's people from all over the world in that group that have been excluded from their families, that have had to um, migrate even from their own countries to be in a safer position. They have people that have been like banned without a reason from their local temples because of an external circumstance. It's people that are trying to offer some service to the Lord and are not able to do it because it's not socially acceptable, or because it's there's some ignorance on the topic of what it means to be trans. For example, there's many people that don't even know what transgender means or what it is. Um, and that's where the allies come into the group. Being an ally to transgender or to diverse devotees in general means you have developed some Krishna consciousness. You have at least developed some mode of goodness in order to see that judging a person by their body or withdrawing respect from them because of that, it's not the behavior of a devotee. It's not a behavior of a human even. It's he's trying to see the other person as a thing that I can control or modify or exploit rather than approach or serve. So I think that's why it's important for me. It has been a um, how do you say that thing, lifesaver, that
Yeah,
thing
a
that floats.
lifesaver. It's been a
Lifesaver.
godsend, a lifesaver.
Yeah. And I mean, it's like, for example, I've seen groups of um, grihastas, group for kids, group for teenage devotees, groups for, I don't know, I've seen many types of groups that connect people with one specific circumstance together. Uh, but having Krishna in the center, that's our main concern. How do we use this to support our practice of sadhana bhakti? How do we um, how do we see Krishna in this?
Mm. Yeah, yeah. I mean, for me, it's a bit of a no-brainer. We were talking about this before I hit the record button. For me, it's kind of a no-brainer. I want to be part of a religious community that's inclusive or as inclusive as possible. And that includes all types of people, certainly those that are different from me. I mean, lots of people are different from me. So I want to ensure that Lord Chaitanya's movement is as inclusive as possible. And I personally am from a very kind of liberal background. I was raised by my mother and grandmother and taught that, that we're all equal and everyone's the same and you should try and get along and support people. And My understanding of the Krishna conscious philosophy is the very first fundamental teaching is we are not the body. The body isn't who we really are. So why does it matter if somebody wants to live or present themselves as male or female or non-binary? And then you join this religious community, um, where the first fundamental teaching is we're not the body. And then all of a sudden you've got all these social hierarchies about the role of men and the role of women. And it's for me, it's just very bizarre, and I think one of the challenges for us all, particularly the leaders of the Krishna community, is how can we implement this philosophy of Bhakti Yoga from a socially conservative background from India, a socially conservative country, and how can we implement it in Western culture or global culture according to time, place, and circumstance. And there are a growing number of leaders now in the Hare Krishna community that are doing that. They are, they're trying to implement or show how we can implement Krishna consciousness according to time, place, and circumstance. Some people. It's like I've forgotten already, but I think we spoke about this briefly before I hit the record button. Some people talked about some of the comments that Prabhupada made and how they might not be supportive of LGBTQI people. We also have to remember that the cultural background that Prabhupada was from. Prabhupada was born in 1896 in India, and I'm sure I would be of the view if there certainly, I mean, there were trans people around in the 60s and 70s. Of course, there were. Trans people have always been in existence. But if the trans um, conversation was more public in the 60s and 70s, it could be that Prabhupada would have had some dialogue about it. But from what I've seen through reading the teachings and the words of Prabhupada, Prabhupada was super inclusive. Prabhupada wanted to include all types of people. And I'm an ally. I'm an ally of the trans community because why wouldn't anybody be an ally of the trans community? Prabhupada wanted the Hare Krishna movement to be a house for the whole world. Well, I don't want to live in a house where everyone looks the same and behaves the same. I mean, how boring would that be? And has the same interests. I want to live in a house full of diversity. I want there to be everyone to be different. And that's why I keep going back to what you said at the beginning of this conversation. What can we take from Krishna consciousness according to our own conditioning, I guess, you know. Um, okay,
Yeah,
I've what? Sorry,
it
go
goes
ahead, go ahead.
both ways. Yeah, it goes both ways. Like, what can we take, and also from our singularity, what can we give? And that thing you were saying about Prabhupada, there was actually there's a famous letter that Prabhupada wrote to a transgender woman. She asked him like, "What can I do about this situation? This is going to be um, this won't allow me to stay in the movement because you're only preaching to men and women. So what should I do?" And Prabhupada told her like, the most important thing was to chant, and either she could decide if she was a female or male, and then uh, be with stick to that, and enter the temple anytime she liked, and just continue to chant Hare Krishna as much as possible. There's I remember that one, but there's a few statements by Prabhupada to trans devotees. It's like, it's not about this philosophy coming from India or whatever. We have the background to be the most broad and inclusive and open religious movement in the universe if we do stick to the behavior of the previous acharyas. There is no acharya that has actually rejected someone from practicing Krishna consciousness by when seeing their sincerity. That's not possible.
Mm.
So why should we do it now?
Hmm. Thank you for reminding me of the, I would say, infamous letter that Prabhupada wrote to Jennifer. I think it was Jennifer, wasn't it? I think. And
Yes.
I'm actually gonna put a link to that letter with this podcast. I've just decided. I did share it online about 2 or 3 months ago. It was Jennifer was a trans woman, or is, sorry, Jennifer has a I've forgotten what her initiated name is, but she's certainly still with us. And I have tried to make contact with her about coming on this podcast. But the letter that Prabhupada wrote basically saying, choose male or female and stick to it, and you're welcome in the temple. So thank you for reminding me of that letter. So, could we talk a bit now about your own story, if you feel comfortable kind of sharing that in terms of what age were you when you decided to live publicly as a trans non-binary person? And why did you decide to make that public affirmation?
Okay. I think I was around 13 or 14 when I found out like the actual words, um, and like the actual meaning of transgender. At that point, I didn't like have the full vocabulary to express myself, like express what I was feeling inside, mm, yeah, how to define that identity. But at that point, I said to myself that that was it. Like, okay, I found that word, I found the meaning, I said I was it. And I told myself I needed to be more sincere and allow myself to be myself. Sadly, at my parents' home, doing that wasn't a safe option at the moment. So that was one of the reasons I moved out later to a different city. I actually hid my queerness for years to avoid uh, further marginalizing myself. With time, I could explore more and figure out in better terms who I was and what that meant. And I was able also to figure out autistic. So I think being visibly a trans, non-binary, and autistic person, an autistic devotee in public spaces is certainly a challenge. It requires a lot of um, what we call unmasking work, like removing the layers of like removing the masks that I had to put on for safety, um, removing like learned ideas, learned behaviors. Um, and by going public, I've been able to form a much simpler and sincere sense of self. I've been able to find my people, to find the devotees that I can associate with, and live um, in a more in better terms with myself. I think living authentically and sincerely trying to practice is a kind of service, inspiring others to do the same, inspiring others to have a happy life in Krishna consciousness, no matter what the labels you can have on your identity are. Um, yeah, it's a matter of I decided to go public on that because I think representation matters. If you don't name something, it doesn't exist. If you don't name um, situations, experiences, then you cannot connect with the people that are living those experiences. So yeah, I think that's why.
Can I ask, because a lot of our viewers and listeners may not know what it means. What does non-binary mean?
Okay. Okay. Well, there's this umbrella term, transgender, that means literally it means someone who crosses gender. Trans means like transpassing from Latin, and gender means like a characteristic or species. So a transgender simply in simple words means someone who does not identify with the body that they were born in and with the sex that they were the sex role that they were assigned at birth. And then inside that term, it's like an umbrella term. Inside that, you have transgender people that identify with the binary common identities like female or male. So there's trans men, trans women, and then there's people who don't identify with just one of those categories. Those are trans non-binary. It's not none of the two, so to say. So you have the binary transgender people and the non-binary people. Um, yeah, I don't know if that's clear.
It's clear. I mean, and forgive me if this is a bit of a naive question, but I've never asked anyone this before. And you might not have the words to explain this, but what does it feel like? What does it feel like to be non-binary, to not identify necessarily with either of those two genders?
The first time I said to myself, okay, yes, I am non-binary. I don't identify with neither of these gender roles. I felt free. I felt more connected uh, with myself. Like when you're tied up to just one label, your mind structures to just one label, just one role of things you have to do. Uh, Sometimes that limits you. That's how I felt, right? Um, Being non-binary or identifying as non-binary for me is like I know that I'm not this body. I know that I am not tied to all these societal prescriptions, and therefore I can let go of identifying with my body more easily. I can let go of that. I can just be, uh, um, I can just use my body to serve no matter what the service is. Because sometimes we see, according to the gender roles, people get assigned different role, different services. Like men are more strong than they carry things or they build things or whatever. Um, but by being non-binary, what I have felt is it's more flexible. I have more flexibility to do things. I have more chance to be creative with myself, with the way I express, with the ways I go inside myself, with the ways I explore my emotions, with the ways that I dress. I try uh, to dress in a very neutral um, manner, and yeah, that's a little bit of my experience.
Thank you, Dani Max. I really appreciate you sharing that. Can you tell us a bit about uh, what kind of support you've received from your friends and family? You've shared your personal story with us, which I appreciate. What kind of support have you received from your friends and family through your own kind of transitioning in life?
Okay. Um, well, there's a part of my family that won't accept my gender identity, and there's another side that is more open and supportive. I've come to the conclusion the last few years that you don't have to understand someone's identity to respect it. Um, some people haven't heard a lot about transgender identity or have trouble understanding it, what it means, and that's okay. But all people, whatever their identities, deserve respect because they're part and parcel of Krishna. The support that I've received from that side of the family and friends is basically mm, educating themselves about what it means to be trans, what it means for them to be the gender they are. It's not just about uh, respecting me, it's about who you are. If you are a trans ally, then in what ways are you questioning your gender role? What does it mean for you to be a man? What does it mean for you to be a woman? What does that mean, and where do those ideas come from? Uh, um, yeah, like that's the biggest support that I think I that matters the most to me. Like people questioning their own ideas of masculinity and femininity, asking themselves, where does that come from? Learning the difference between like concepts between um, sex, gender, and gender expression. Those are three different things, and people usually just combine them all. Learning about the policies that affect trans people's access to human rights. Learning, I have friends and family members that have had to learn some um, how do you say that, like law, some laws, like local laws, because I haven't had access to some basic human rights here. So things like that, or using the correct pronouns, questioning their own usage of language, not making assumptions, not judging people based on their body, um, or just based on the way that they behave. Being there for me when I'm like making changes on my document. I had been trying for 2 years to change my name in my document, my ID. And just a few days ago, I got it. So it was a real process. And I had been supported by friends, family members, like how that process works, how they could be with me. Um, yeah, I think it's being there for people, like speaking up for me, uh, speaking up for trans people, support and inclusivity, not just about endurance or denial of these material circumstances. As I've also noted um, how my family and friends, um, how they started noticing more than me, even sometimes, microaggressions. Um, I don't know if I should say what microaggressions basically are, like everyday comments, questions, and situations that can be hurtful or stigmatizing to marginalized people or groups. Um, like a subtle um, assumptions, um, like microaggressions may have no idea of what the the experience of the person is. For example, someone can comment that to a transgender relative or friend, like, oh, you don't look trans. Oh, I wouldn't have, no, you don't look trans. Trying to say that is a compliment, but that actually is not a compliment. Why is me not looking trans a good thing? It's a question. It's an open question. This is often phrased as a compliment for trans people. However, it implies that being trans is a negative thing, or that all people want to be perceived as cisgender. Um, some microaggressions are subtle, some microaggressions are more direct, but yeah, basically, like the biggest, like the support that I appreciate the most from my family and friends has been the way that they have questioned themselves, questioned their own experience, and stand up not just for me, but for other uh, diverse people around them. Because, yeah, at the end, it's the support that I appreciate. It's not about supporting me individually, but supporting um, diversity in their lives, in themselves.
And just kind of widening that group of people, what kind of support have you received within the Hare Krishna community to your to transitioning?
So that one is more tricky. That question is more tricky. On the one hand, the devotees that I've met in person, they lack a lot of information about diversity and inclusion in general, and not just in terms of gender diversity in general. There's a lot of ignorance about what it means to be trans, even on a material level. Um, Being trans is like you can you simply can't identify with the body you were born in. It's not a choice. It's not about choosing something, someone else, trying to be someone else. It's about accepting yourself. For some reason, for some karma, we got this bodily experience, and we need to surrender to it as an experience of total truth, total transparency, total sincerity. And being sincere is like the qualification to start the process of bhakti. Um, Dharma is not just the job that you gotta do. Dharma is your nature, your purpose, your relationship with Krishna. Krishna, we all know Krishna's told Arjuna, you can just go to the forest and be a monk. You're a kshatriya. You can be anyone else. And if you try to do it, that would be harmful. So you can, in the same way, you cannot force a trans person to be cis. It's what they were given in this life. Um, I remember a few weeks ago we had a meeting with the allies, and someone said that when people try to do that, try to force a trans devotee to present as cis, is like trying to make them walk in shoes that don't fit them. So what happens is if you use someone else's shoes, you're not able to walk or you get blisters. Is the disturbance. I think the devotees that lived at the temple I was at, They tried their best to understand this, to understand my experience. They tried to understand what pronouns were and tried to talk to me um, with male pronouns. Their way of supporting me was by letting me be on the male side of the temple when there were divisions by gender. Um, like on those programs where you divide, yeah. Um, there were people that kept naming me back and forth with feminine and masculine pronouns, even though I asked not to name me in that way. Other than that, most of the devotees in the congregation didn't even know I'm trans because I'm cis-passing, and I didn't come out to many of them because I didn't felt like it would be completely safe for me to do that or beneficial for me to do that. So in the devotees that I've met in person, um, the way of supporting me, it's the same as my family. Like they tried to their best ability to understand what trans meant and to allow me um, do service. But other than that, they still lack some information. On the other hand, I have built consistent online association with devotees who have been key in my process, like of self-discovery and self-affirmation, and who have helped me figure out um, things that I alone would have never. Um, like explaining to me parts of the philosophy of Krishna consciousness, explaining to me um, how to apply those things to my experience, explaining like being with me during those process of trying to, um, as I said before, like remove all those layers. We all have to do that. We all have many layers. So um, there have been devotees that have helped me do that in very, very special, like very intimate manners. Um, by being with me during the process. I think there's no best way to support someone than giving them the tools to apply Krishna consciousness in their life. And that's what I found in this trans and allies Sangha. That's the best example that I have. Because it's a program focused on open dialogue about our individual experience, individual practices in Krishna consciousness, and a study of the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. And um, we have seen over the months how by studying the philosophy, our lives have been um, or our internal state and our approach to life has become stronger and more resilient. Um, so I think the support that I have received, just to summarize, is also educating themselves and support me in my journey to spiritually educating myself.
Thank you, Dani Max. I do appreciate that, and you sharing some of your experiences. And it's from what you've said, it's kind of it's quite similar to what other trans devotees have also said to me about their experiences in the Hare Krishna community. So thank you for that. Okay, next question is one that I'm quite I'm interested in all the answers, but particularly this one. How does, if at all, the philosophy of Bhakti Yoga support or encourage you to live publicly as a trans non-binary person? Or in other words, has Bhakti helped you?
For me personally, knowing about spiritual science of Bhakti Yoga has saved my life in many occasions. It has helped me find ways to detach myself um, from those labels, even, and from the masks, and be sincere. Um, I think the principles of Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti point out directly to mercy, purity, to truthfulness, to dedicating oneself, one's own energy to the service of the Supreme Person, to Sri Krishna, and by adopting this process on as a basis of my life, I could get to the position to understand that whatever my material circumstances are, they're just temporary. There's things that are much more essential. I understand that I'm not the controller of this situation. This is just another life that I have to live according to my past activities. Um, and by understanding that, freedom relies on freedom from material consciousness. I could let go of fear and doubt and yeah, like actually living life. I could let go of any wound of rejection or uh, uh, any identification with those temporary circumstances, and in that state of mind start to use this identity to connect with people of similar experience and connect them to the process of bhakti in some way or another. Um, the living entity is created uh, and it's enjoyed by the creator, supreme enjoyer. So the circumstances under which that happens are just the paraphernalia for the living entity to offer some service, some interaction to Krishna. And I see my circumstances, my transgender identity as such, as paraphernalia to serve Krishna in a specific way in this life. This is the most essential, the relationship with Krishna. And by knowledge of Bhakti Yoga, I'm accepting that I'm simply embodying trans non-binary experience in this life. This material world is temporary, but it's very real, and we need to take care of it. Um, from from that state of mind, I've been able to accept, like to actually realize that I'm not this body, just a spirit soul and part and parcel of Krishna, and I'm just a servant of the absolute truth. Now I think of that verse in 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Um, what does it say? Um, I remember the Sanskrit, but I don't remember the translation. That says that Tate nukampam susamikshamano munjame vattam kritam pivakam kribhagvapurpir vidadam namaste jivitajo mukti pade sadhayava. That says like, my dear Lord, that devotee that simply is waiting for you to give to him your costless mercy while suffers the reactions of their previous activities, and with their heart, mind, and body offers you respect, they are surely eligible uh, for for liberation, because it has become their legitimate um, claim. So it's like, I know this is just a result of um, past situations, um, and that I just need to keep going, just need to be sincere, just need to be authentic uh, as much as possible. And Krishna will see that. And if he allows, if he wants, someday he'll give me his mercy and I'll be able to come back to him. So I think without the philosophy of Bhakti Yoga, I just would be suffering, but not waiting for this mercy.
Thank you for sharing that, Dani Max. I was thinking, it's kind of related to what you were saying, and I was thinking about this earlier, but I wanted to wait to this particular discussion point. Is I was thinking about renounced orders of life, within the kind of global religious community. Oh, there you are. You disappeared for a second. But I was thinking about renounced orders of life. And you talked about how, because I asked you, what does it feel like to be non-binary? And your answer was around not necessarily identifying with either male or female, or those roles that we perceive to be male or female, but actually you kind of weren't necessarily identifying with either and trying to detach yourself. And I was thinking just generally about kind of religious orders. In lots of religious traditions, we'll have these in the Hare Krishna community, in the different Hindu groups, in the Christian community. You'll have renounced orders of life where people will try and detach themselves from stereotypical worldly positions. And I was wondering, in my naivety, could that be uh, socially seen as non-binary in a way? I mean, maybe it's not. You know, I think of, I know there's a number of, you know, female nuns in the Buddhist tradition that want to detach themselves from the femaleness that they were born with, and actually try and be as detached as possible from these designations. I mean, what could that be seen? I think maybe naively on my part as a presentation of what non-binary might be.
Well, I mean, it could be. It's not just, I mean, some people like me identify non-binary with like detaching from um, these roles, like these specific societal perceptions. Some people see non-binary, being non-binary as like mixing, like being more open to explore their identities. This thing that happens with many traditions, that at some point people just try to live more simple lives and try to detach from the, I would say that is being non-binary, but I do think that uh, the concept of non-binary can help understand a little bit more those experiences, and like it can help understand how why it is important to detach, and how being open to explore your own gender identity will lead you to that point of detaching yourself from that label.
Mm. Yes. Thank you for that. I do appreciate that. Um, just to let you know that we can hear you very well, but the camera's cracking a little bit. The view, just a little bit, but we can still hear you very well. So I did hear your answer wonderfully. So we've got one question left. Um, and I was looking back at some of the other interviews I've conducted with other trans devotees. Over the last 4 years now of this podcast, you're, as far as I'm aware, the fourth trans devotee I've interviewed. Of course, I don't ask everybody what their background is and, do they still identify with the gender that they were born in? Because it's none of my business. But certainly out, uh, out trans people, you're the fourth. And there's a few others that I've been trying to tempt to come on the podcast, but I've got a bit more prodding and teasing and questioning to do. So the final question is, what could the global Hare Krishna community do more of to be more welcoming and inclusive of trans people?
Hmm. Well, I have several things to say about that.
Go
First,
ahead, the floor is yours.
um, the first thing I have to say is like the place that you're at affects the way you experience Krishna consciousness. So we have to be very practical and recognize the time, place, and circumstances of every devotee. Um, yeah, that as a comment. And what devotees could do is educate themselves. Allyship means open-mindedness, means inclusiveness in general. It's not about the labels only. It's not about saying that okay, yeah, you accept everyone and this process is for everyone. This process is for cleaning your heart and cleaning it from everything. Um, it's not just saying it, it's about actually cleaning your heart from prejudice, from fear, from envy, from hatred, from frustration, and meeting people where they're at. The fact that they're devotees, they're transgender devotees showing up in the temples, coming out to communities, um, that's not the only thing that they are. That's not the center of our lives. If we're trying to approach um, if we're trying to approach the practice of bhakti, is because of labels. So if it helps raise the trans devotees people, they have about clear always being there for a victory, full clear absence.
Danny, we're having a few connection issues at the moment. So this has happened a few times over the last 4 years when you're recording a podcast with someone on the other side of the world. Of course, when the internet connection isn't great, on the rare occasion this happens. I remember I was interviewing someone a couple of years ago in Nepal, and Danny's coming back into the room now, and that was a real challenge. We had some connection issues. You're still um, for some reason it was cracking up and then you left. Um, but I carried on talking whilst you'd left, but you weren't gone that long. Can you hear and see me okay?
Come back.
Okay. What I'm going to do, Danny, I'm going to turn off my camera. Sometimes that helps. Um, I think it increases the
Mark.
bandwidth or something. So I think this is actually a lot better now. So actually, you're not cracking up. So I think we heard your second point. You were talking about different points. Um, Maybe you could start with your
Yeah.
third one.
Okay. Yeah. So I said recognizing the circumstances of the place that where the devotees are. The second was like educating
Yeah,
themselves. Devotees can educate themselves. I was talking about that one.
yeah, yeah.
That the information about queerness is already there. It has been there always. Uh, Pre-Victorian times, there was queer acceptance in all Varsha.
Mm,
And we know that from Manusmriti, we know that from Padma Purana, we know that from many sources, from many Vedic sources, where we find that there were Sanskrit terms to identify different diverse identities. Like we have on the Manusmriti, they're using Tritiya Prakriti to identify people that don't identify with their physical sex and instead consider themselves to live as the opposite gender role. You have um, terms for intersex people like napumsha. You have terms for um, gay men, for lesbian women, for bisexuals, for non-binary devotees. Like Nastriya is like a term in Sanskrit that identifies a person born in a female body, but that does not um, that is not a woman, for example. And all these terms, this is not recent. This is in the Manusmriti. And we have the story of Shikandi. We have the story of Arjuna's Brihanala. We have many sources. Um, and my third point is that being an ally is actually Vaishnava Seva, because none of us are qualified to determine in what way Krishna wants someone to serve him. No karma is worse or better than any other karma when on the path of Krishna Bhakti. And there's no karmic disqualification or qualification for being a Vaishnava. No one knows. Um, we're not this body better than trans people. Um, and we know for sure that the way to please Krishna the most is to serve the people who are trying to serve him, to serve his servants. By supporting trans people, devotees can help create safe environments, honest environments, and for newcomers to Krishna consciousness, to consider a person's level of surrender or dedication to Krishna is limited by their material conditions can lead to Vaishnava Parad. Krishna is it's Patita Pavan Dinavandhu. He's the friend of the most disadvantaged, unprivileged, and currently transgender people are a persecuted minority around the world and around almost all spiritual religions of around the world. Why would a safe community not allow someone to do service, or why would they mistreat a person because of that disadvantage or this circumstance? Also, I think that social and emotional safety is needed for the ability to progress or advance in spirituality, in your spiritual journey. It's a byproduct of sadhusanga. Creating safe spaces in our communities can encourage and support Vaishnavas in getting healthcare, getting their legal protection, their civil rights, their social cultural needs are met. These are aspects of service to a devotee, because it's how we keep our service vessels in optimal state. We create, when we support that someone takes care of their material circumstances, and at the same time create safe spaces for them to practice and to get association, then we're creating optimal, cohesive, loving communities. There's no better opportunity to practice humility, tolerance, and respect without attachment than to choose to believe, to choose to accept, to choose to validate the experience of another person and their self-expressed identity over what I think, what I want to control, over what I want and what I need. And at the end of the day, I think if we cannot see Krishna in everyone, that's a good reminder to go back to the basics. So how to be an ally in Krishna consciousness? Don't tolerate the disrespect to other people. Don't tolerate disrespect to devotees. Just respect their self-presented identity, respect their pronouns. And if you don't understand something, you can ask. It's not a sin to ask. We need to be patient with those questioning their gender identity and question our own ideas of what that means. We need to check in if our attitude toward gender roles is supported by our Shastra, by our tradition, or is it something that is just social cultural from the place that I met with the devotees? And in those safe spaces, we can listen. We can learn to listen, not just to trans people, to all diverse voices on the path, on their path of bhakti. There's no need to assume what the experience of someone is or not. We need to be careful about uh, yeah, not assuming, if for example, not assuming someone's gender, for example. And on the other hand of that point is being careful about confidentiality and disclosure of someone's personal information. uh, yeah, basically being an ally means to cultivate Krishna consciousness and follow the steps of the acharyas. I find um, the Nectar of Instruction a very helpful guide on how to be an ally, how to behave amongst devotees, amongst any kind of devotees, including transgender devotees. Um, so what could the global Hare Krishna community do? Um, be open to be educated on material circumstances and apply them on spiritual practices. That's what I think.
Mm.
And yeah.
Thank you, Dani Max. It's as soon as I turned off my camera, by the way, I could hear and see you clearly. So maybe I should turn off my camera more often. I'm going to keep it off for a while, just in case there's connection issues. But I really appreciated you sharing all of those really inspiring ideas, actually, as to how we can all support, or how we all should be able to support the trans community within the Hare Krishna movement. And some listeners and viewers might say, well, is there a trans community in the Hare Krishna movement? And there is. Just like there's a trans community in the wider world, you know. You know, I've been an ally of the trans community uh, within the Hare Krishna movement for many years, and you know, it's certainly a great thing to be and to support people. And I liked, Danny, what you said just now about it was something like, if you cannot yet see Krishna within all or in the hearts of all, you need to go back to basics. And that was a great, I love that kind of a great reminder that Krishna exists in the hearts of all, you know, not just white heterosexual men. Thankfully, you know, Krishna exists in the hearts of all, and we should show respect and appreciation for all living entities. So that was a great kind of way to kind of um, sum up, I guess, what we've been talking about. I'm going to try and turn my camera back on and see what happens. There you are. You seem to be okay at the moment. My hair's a bit of a mess,
Okay.
but yeah. And what I'm going to do with this podcast is I'm going to put some of your kind of thoughts and ideas with the description of the things that you've said. And
Just
yeah, can you're still there. You're still there. Um, okay. Believe it or not,
yeah, I'm here.
We've been recording for over an hour and a half, I think. It's gone really quickly. It always does. I find that sometimes people are a bit kind of unsure of how to start the conversation, and then all of a sudden, 90 minutes later, we're kind of done. And I just want to say how much I really appreciate you being willing to share your story. It's meant a lot to me. We've been in dialogue for several months, I think, at least 2 or 3 months, and we finally arranged this today. So thank you. I really do appreciate it. Okay. K- Um,
It's my pleasure and my honor to share. Before we finish, uh,
yeah, I'm
done?
still here. No,
Did you
crack on.
say
I'm still
something?
recording. I'm still recording. Please carry on.
Did
Yeah,
I
yeah.
break out? Okay, okay. Um, I just really strongly believe that we should, as if we are identifying as devotees and Vaishnavas, we shouldn't endeavor to bring Lord Chaitanya's mercy to all living entities, to all living beings, and that we must treat all the devotees and indeed all creatures with appropriate dignity and respect. Uh, Srila Prabhupada's books inspire us to such behavior by revealing that all living beings are equally part and parcel of Lord Krishna. And this is the eternal fact that should serve as sufficient justification and inspiration to arouse the mercy and respect of true Vaishnavas. And in that line of ideas, I want to make the invitation for everyone, any trans, non-binary, queer, ally, um, devotees around there to join us in our Sangha. It's on Saturdays at 6 p.m. EST, Eastern Standard Time. We have meetings weekly on Saturdays, and the third week of the month, we meet with, we have a meeting between transgender devotees and allied devotees. So this is an open invitation for anyone who's maybe looking for a safe space to explore their identity and explore the scriptures and study scriptures, to share their process in Krishna consciousness and find support while they're doing that. So yeah, that's an open invitation.
Thank you, Dani and Dani Max. And I am still here, but there, I turned the camera off as soon as there was a connection issue. So we did hear what you were saying. But yeah, thank you for that open invitation. And I'm going to put a number of links, I think, with this podcast. And there's also a number of support networks out there for LGBTQI devotees, and I'll make sure all of those different um, links are there available. And of course, people can contact us here at the Hare Krishna Project, and we can redirect you or direct you to other devotees such as Dani Max, who I'm sure will be happy to listen to you and help you on your spiritual journey. Yeah. Okay, so I'm going to say goodbye to the viewers and listeners at home. I shall keep my camera off. But Dani Max, if you just stay on Zoom, and then I'll come back in and we can have a brief debrief after that. So a big thank you to Dani Max for being our guest on this week's podcast, episode number 156. I really appreciated the conversation today. I think it's a conversation that we have often need to have and be reminded about. This broad conversation about inclusivity is that actually, if we want to follow Prabhupada's instructions to make sure that the Hare Krishna movement is a house for the whole world, then we need to make sure that people in the whole world feel included and valued, not just those that fit a certain mold or behave in a certain way or dress in a certain way or who identify with certain genders or don't identify with certain genders. So I really appreciated this conversation today. It's a great start to 2025. So do not forget, if you're watching this on YouTube, if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button. And every time I say that, the number of subscribers does go up. And or if you're watching this on Facebook, if you haven't already, please do like or follow the Hare Krishna Project Facebook page. You can be kept updated about future podcasts and video productions from the Hare Krishna Project in that way as well. And do not forget, if you want to be a guest on a future edition of the podcast, please do get in touch. Similar to the theme for today's conversation, we try to be as inclusive as possible here at the Hare Krishna Project. If you go to our website, theharekrishnaproject.org.uk, you will see that we have a values statement on our About Us section. Probably one of the very few Hare Krishna websites in the world where we have a statement about values and equality because we want to include people. For me, coming from the liberal West, it's a no-brainer. I don't know why the people struggle with it. But anyway, so Danny, if you just Danny Max, if you just stay with me in Zoom, and I'll just say goodbye to everyone at home. So see you all next week. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Take care.